The NBA is back, and with it, an old acquaintance. From the Dodge Sports Desk, I'm Mike Sherman, and this is the NBA in OKC with Mike Baldwin. Mike, when the Oklahoma City opens up the first NBA season to call its own on Wednesday, Kelvin Sampson will be in the house. What's he doing here?
Well, I mean, obviously he's had two phone call situations, first with Oklahoma, then he goes to Indiana, and the NCAA says, here's the rules you got to play with. Evidently, they claim the NCAA broke those rules. Indiana felt that they had no choice but to oust him. He immediately started working for the Spurs as a scout, and then he realized, I need to switch probably to the NBA because my NCAA future is in doubt. So he lands with his good friend Scott Skiles at Milwaukee, and a lot of people feel like that this is really setting the stage for him to have a future career possibly as an NBA head coach, and that's his goal.
Yeah, you know, this is the first time Kelvin's coached in Oklahoma since he bowed out in 2006 of the NCAA tournament, and all those NCAA violations were hanging over his head then. So that all that part of it's been chronicled. But what's interesting about him and the Bucks is that over the years, through Kelvin's work with the Team USA in the summer, coaching in Canada and coaching international with teams, he developed a lot of good connections with the pros. Greg Popovich gave him. He scouted for them during the playoffs last year. So. And Kelvin's a defensive coach, and really when you boil it down, the teams that win in the NBA are defensive-oriented teams. Scott Skiles is trying to bring that sort of culture to Milwaukee, but Mike, when you look at it, this is the road
less traveled.
Less traveled to go. Most of these guys go from college coaches and doing real well, like P.J. Carlesimo. He made the finals of the NCAA tournament, lost to Michigan. Next time season starts, he's the coach of the Trailblazers. So, and those guys, he went to playoffs 3 straight years. But there's not very many guys in the NBA who are doing what Kelvin did, which is go be an assistant first and then work your way back up.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's part because of his situation in Indiana, but the thing is, it could be a blessing in disguise. I mean, you can go down the list from Hamilton, Pitino, Calipari, all these guys. They were big-time college coaches. The Lakers tried to woo Coach K there that one time, but all the guys that have gone the last 15 years have not won. P.J. Carlesimo says a lot of it is because they're inheriting bad teams. And so as a result, you're starting here trying to get them there, and when they don't after 3 or 4 years, the big contract, getting the big college guys. But there is a prevailing theory right now in the NBA when you talk to general managers and read some of the stories I've read the last year or two that I don't think college coaches can do it anymore. Whether that's right or wrong, P.J. disagrees because he says they can do it. It's still similar coaching. Kelvin referred to the 24-second shot clock. Got to get the shot up quicker. There's a few subtle differences, but they mainly say it's still coaching. Players in the NBA still want to be coached. And so a lot of people feel like this may be the best way for Kelvin to land an NBA job because after he works a year or two in the league, people will now see that on the resume. He didn't come from Oklahoma. He didn't come from Indiana. He came from within the NBA. And a lot of GMs right now are a little skeptical of college coaches just because not one has really cracked through. Remember when Jimmy Johnson did that in the NFL? There were, for a while, they had similar track record.
They called him a college coach.
Right, and a lot of people said college coaches can't win because very few of them had done it. But once Jimmy broke through, the NFL said, well, maybe it does take the right guy or the right situation. I think this is a good situation for Kelvin. Learn the game, get around the league, let people know I'm now in the NBA, I'm not a college coach. We'll see if he gets a head coaching job, but that's his goal.
Well, as you said, he's not going to, this won't show up on his record. Whatever the Bucks do, that's not going on Kelvin Sampson's resume. What is going on his resume is experience. He's gonna get some experience with a guy, coaching with a guy he knows well. The other thing that's interesting about whether Kelvin can make that track is the other obstacle he's going to have to overcome is a lot of NBA coaches are former NBA players. Kelvin never played in the league.
No.
And so you got Doc Rivers. You look at the people who coach, Phil Jackson, even guys like Randy Whitman, even guys, like Mike Dunleavy. They all coached in the league. This is a league of players who become coaches. Now, P.J. Carlesimo, not one of those guys, but Byron Scott is. So that is another sort of level Kelvin's got to break through to. The question will be interesting is if the Bucks can become successful, if they have a brand of playing that Kelvin helps bring them. That's when you start seeing some of these guys who weren't NBA players become NBA coaches.
And it's like anything else. You have those trends. We're going to go for, back in the day in the NFL, we're going to go for those Lawrence Taylor type guys that can rush the passer. Everybody wanted to go get one of those. I mean, there's trends, but once one guy breaks through somebody else, maybe it's somebody before Kelvin. Maybe it's another college coach or a guy that has his kind of background that makes it an NBA. Or maybe Kelvin's the guy that breaks through for other guys. I think he's got a shot. He won almost 500 games. He had 11 straight NCAA appearances with OU, took him to a Final Four, a couple of Elite Eights. He shows he can coach. DJ White, who's on the Thunder team, just raved about him. We only had 2 or 3 losses until he was ousted out. He says we were one of the best teams in the country. Kelvin can still coach, but he's going to have to prove himself, and it probably a year or 2 in the NBA as an assistant will probably help him.
What else did the Bucks bring to town?
Well, obviously they bring Michael Redd on the Olympic team. Andrew Bogut, the #1 pick, ahead of Chris Paul that year. Everybody now, how did he go number 4? Well, Bogut was a big-time center that are valuable in this league, and he's starting to finally blossom, we think, this year. He's been showing signs that he's getting pretty good. This is the year we'll find out. That's the one thing that the Thunder have difficulty with is interior defense, and right off the bat, they face a guy that's on his way up. And so then, I mean, they have other people as well, but those are the 2 that everybody's going to recognize, and those are their 2 stars.
Also, so this week, the Thunder's at home on Wednesday against the Bucks. On Saturday night, they go to Houston against Yao Ming, another big dominating
to
postman.
me, Houston is it's a road game. They're not expected to win, whatever happens that night. But to me, Houston is the wild card in the whole NBA this year. They've got Yao Ming, they've got Artest, the new, and McGrady. So they've got 3 stars. They've always had injuries with Yao and McGrady. If those guys stay healthy, they may be as good as anybody, including the Lakers, Celtics, and the Hornets. So that's one of the teams. They're healthy right now. How far can they go? But I think they're one of the intriguing teams this year.
Well, you saw them in Tulsa, too, and they have some depth that they have not had in the past. That guy, Aaron Brooks, lit up the Thunder.
Well, McGrady didn't even play that night.
McGrady didn't play, but now in McGrady role, that small forward shooting guard role, they're interchangeable. If McGrady's back flares up, Ron Artest can handle that. He's a little bit of a powder keg, of course, but they also have a great coach in Rick Adelman, who was there. It was his first year last year, and really took them a long way. It's injuries with Yao Ming and Tracy McGrady that really determine how far that team could go, but they're not going to rise and fall. They're not going to fall out of the playoffs, I don't think, if one of those guys get hurt.
No, they didn't last year when Yao got hurt, and McGrady was hurt at times. But then it's the next game, Sunday night in the Ford Center, I think is the game that we're going to really get a good judge, is there's a team similar to them, the Minnesota Timberwolves, trying to build with young players, and I think they do have a bright future. They have some good young players on that ball club. Jefferson, and go down the rest of the roster. I mean, they got some good young players similar to the I almost said Hornets. We better watch that there. The Thunder has Westbrook, Green, and Durant they're building around. Well, that's what the Timberwolves are doing as well. And so these are 2 teams that are trying to get to the 30, 35, 40 win mark this year. It's going to be interesting to see how far that team's going, because they showed a little signs late last year, and they've added a few pieces in the draft that I'm interested to see how good that team can get this year.
Who's ahead in the rebuilding process right now?
Well, I think it's difficult to say, and that's why we need to get through Christmas to see how both of them do, because they both have similar storylines. I think they both could get in that 30-35 range, and it's how they handle the early season with young guys, as we've seen in the past, and we've seen a little bit in preseason. Young guys make mistakes. Which one of these teams has the better young guys remains. Right now, of course, we're local, so we say Oklahoma City's ahead because they have Durant, and Minnesota doesn't quite have a Durant, but they have some guys that are not that far off. And I think they may have a few more total pieces in their 6 or 7 as far as the future. But I like both teams' chances in 2 or 3 years to be factors in the West. This year, both of them are learning on the job.
They both made big deals. I think the Timberwolves, though, they had the biggest bargaining, the biggest trading chip when they dealt Kevin Garnett. That got back Al Jefferson, and then
they got volume. Yes,
they got volume, and they got Al Jefferson. The other thing they did was they made the big trade for O.J. Mayo and Kevin Love. They got a deadly shooter in Mike Miller. So that seems to be the thing that really gives them a sort of a more well-rounded offense. But as you said, these are 2 teams we'll be able to watch and estimate. This is a team that the Thunder is trying to climb over as they try to climb the ranks of the Western Conference. And then the team that everybody's trying to climb over, the Boston Celtics, next week, come into Oklahoma City for, really for the season standpoint is what is the first marquee game at the Ford Center?
Well, that's why it's next Wednesday night. Some people argue the opening night is the biggest game just because it's the first game in franchise history.
Sure.
Some people pick the Hornets because they were here, the local favorites that are a title contender. To me, Boston is the marquee game of the whole season, and it's the first week of the season. They open on Wednesday night. The following Wednesday night, the Celtics come in. First of all, you got the star power quality. You have the three stars in Allen, Pierce, and Garnett. So, anytime you have stars come in, usually it's LeBron and some guys, Kobe and some guys like behind them. They have three superstars that are all, I don't know if they all make the Hall of Fame, but they all maybe have a chance, at least Garnett and Allen for sure, maybe Pierce. And then they're the defending champs. They got the aura of all the titles in the past that they had 20 dormant years, but now last year out of nowhere, they rose from the ashes and won the whole title. These guys are aging a little bit, 33, and 31 are their ages, but they still got a lot of gas left in the tank. And it's just the Celtics. It's the Yankees of baseball or the Celtics of basketball. They're coming to your town. That, more than anything else, I think, signifies the NBA's back in town. Look who's in town the first week of the season, the Celtics.
And the thing about the Celtics is, in spite of all that, 66 wins, really proving themselves to be one step up from the Lakers. If you go back and watch that series, the Celtics really handled the Lakers. Paul Pierce was the best player in the series. Really made himself a star, I think. Not everybody's picking them. They're not a landslide pick to repeat. Why is that, Mike?
Well, part of it is Lakers didn't have a healthy Bynum last year, and so now he's healthy. And as we saw in the preseason game against the Thunder, this guy can flat out play.
Yeah.
He's a young guy he's one of the future good centers in this league. And so you have Kobe. Gasol was not with them all year. They were piecing it together at the end. A lot of people like them the most. Celtics, though, are the second pick. Usually the Hornets are the third pick, and then you get into a little bit of the Rockets or Spurs. Nobody else in the East is really being given a shot to win the whole thing. Some people like Cleveland a little bit, but they are the number 2 pick in most of your preseason analysis behind the Lakers, and so a lot of people will expect a rematch. I personally like the Hornets, if they can handle inside players late in the year, but that's what's going to make this season interesting. There isn't one landslide pick. There are probably 5 or 6 teams going in, and who knows who emerges. Nobody picked Tampa Bay, I don't think, way back in April in baseball, and nobody really was picking the Celtics at this time last year. They will be better, they should be pretty good, but nobody was really picking them to win the title, and look, they just took off and had that great start, and then they won the title.
For the record, Mike's pick, the New Orleans Hornets. He's picking the Hornets to win, I picked the Celtics. Hey, Mike, thanks for all that analysis. You can keep up with it and follow all the latest news on the Thunder and Oklahoma City's first NBA season to call its own with the best coverage team around at newsok.com, newsok.tv, and every day in the New Look Oklahoman.